What's up guys, and welcome back to TechPlant. Today is another Pothos experiment, and this time the results are incredible, so let's check it out. Believe it or not, but I do actually read your comments and they do affect the channel. So someone asked what's the difference between just regular water and some water with fertilizer in it, so we're going to do that experiment today. So like all my Pothos experiments, the first thing we have to do is get our Pothos vine so we can make some cuttings and start the experiment. If you're new and this is the first one, I'm going to show you where the node is just in case you're trying to also propagate some Pothos. So if you look along the vines, you're going to kind of see an area where the leaf protrudes outwards, and you will notice like a small kind of ring that goes all the way around the vine, and usually it's accompanied with air roots. So once you kind of identify the node, you're going to cut 1.5 to 2 inches on either side. The node is very important because that's where the plant can start new growth from, and so from each cutting you can get a whole new vine. Alright, and to divvy these up, I just kind of split them in half. I just try to keep an equal number and make sure they were kind of the same as far as like how the leaf health was and everything else, just so we have a pretty equal experiment. We're going to use water as our control basically because that's the most standard way I see people propagate these things, and then that way we can compare the regular version to our new and improved using fertilizer version. I really like Maxsea for this kind of stuff because it's not super strong and it doesn't burn my plants. I use this on my carnivorous plants which are extremely sensitive to fertilizer, yet it works super well and just overall works great for anything sensitive to fertilizer. So again, I think it's probably the perfect thing to try for pothos propagation. If you don't have this stuff though, I think you can get away with some really diluted fertilizer and you should be fine to do the same thing I'm doing. Now that the pothos is in their respective jars, all we're going to do is add some time and some light and see what happens. Now before you raid the comment section, I have actually learned, and I will tell you my lighting setup, it's going to be under a pretty darn bright light for about 15 hours a day. But you could get away with probably like a 35 watt light as long as it's only about 12 inches above, and I think you'll see the same results. Alright, about 15 days has passed, so let's take a look and see what happened. We're going to start with the water cup and let's compare kind of the growth of the actual plant vine and the growth of the roots. So right off the bat we can already see that there is some small new vine growth starting on some of them, and they pretty much all have rooted, so that's good. Here's a little bit more close so you can really kind of see. Make sure you really embed this into your brain and memories because we're going to compare them next with the ones from the fertilizer. But my first observations are most of them do have a small spike kind of coming out of the node where you're going to see your new vine growth, so they're doing pretty good. Only about a ½ inch though. And they all have some decent roots which are very white and a little bit kind of flexible and soft. To be more transparent and provide more information so you guys don't have to actually ask, I have not added any additional nutrients. I've only been topping off both jars with additional water, and that is it. Let's get these cuttings out of the Maxsea jar and take a look. From my initial impressions, they do look pretty similar to the previous ones we just saw, but I can notice that the roots are a little darker looking and the new spike growth is a little better looking. But let's take a closer look. Upon looking much closer, I can see that the roots are a little more greener if I compare them to the ones in the water, which were a lot more white. These are definitely more like colored. Now, I don't know if that's greenness from the plant and like chlorophyll or something, I doubt it, or if it's some sort of like algae because it's got a little more nutrients in there. I'm not sure, but it doesn't look to be harming the plant. The amount of roots though do look similar to the ones that are in just regular water. However, I think you could safely say that the plant spike or like the new vine that's growing out does look like they're a little longer and there are more cuttings with more spikes. So far it looks like it's advantageous to put some Maxsea or some diluted fertilizer in your cups. Alright, about another 15 days has passed, so let's take a look at the one that's been primarily in water. From the initial impressions, I can see the leaves are looking a little different, but that sometimes happens with almost all my propagations when they sit a little too long. Looking at them all together, I do see quite a bit of root growth. I mean, they've really accelerated in their growth in the past 15 days, and these are definitely ready to pot. Some of the spikes have gotten pretty long, but some are still kind of lagging behind. The roots are starting to see a little coloration. I'm sure this is algae or just the age, the natural age of roots, I don't know. But I see this in all my propagations. Let's skip on over to the fertilizer one because I'm sure you're curious to see the progress after a total of 30 days from cutting. Looking at it initially in the jar, it does look pretty gross. There was a lot more algae growth in here because of the additional nutrients that were available in the water, but that's not too alarming. But the leaves do look quite different from the other one, as if they almost have a nutrients deficiency. Looking at them kind of all laying out together, I can definitely see a difference in the roots. There's a lot more of them, and the roots have like sub-rootlets. I don't really know what you would call them, but the roots are definitely branching out a lot more in these ones. On top of that, the spike growth of the new vine growth is actually so extreme that I could barely tell that it was new growth because it looks so old. If we look at them a little closer, you'll see what I mean. Almost all of the cuttings have such long new vines that it supersedes the actual like leaf itself. I mean, they're longer than the original leaf that was on this vine. Some of them even have 2 leaves total growth on the new vines. I honestly didn't expect such a radical change. I was expecting to see like maybe more root growth and a little bit more, but this is crazy. The difference is absolutely amazing. Most of the cuttings that were sitting in the fertilizer have almost 2 full new nodes on their growth, which is radical. Some are even forming new roots on the new nodes. Here they are pretty much side by side, and you can see for yourself that the difference is actually radical. I would have never guessed this would have worked this well. I would have been more afraid of like die off or like too much fertilizer, burning, all kinds of problems. I would have never guessed that this would have worked so well. Like all my other pothos experiment videos, I'm going to pot them up all together just to get a nice bushy pot. But you could clearly see in this experiment, hands down, the Maxsea does work in an incredible way. I bet you we got about 4 times the growth easily than we did with just plain water. The amount of Maxsea is kind of hard for me to tell you how much I put in here, but I mixed 1 full gallon with 1 teaspoon of Maxsea, and then I just kind of poured what you saw in there from that 1 gallon, so it's about that much. Alright guys, that pretty much sums up this video. I was actually shocked to see how great the results truly were. In most of our pothos experiments, the results usually ended up being a little bit better than the regular method, but never so extreme that it was like a totally like worth it thing to do. But this one for sure, I would get a hold of some Maxsea or some other basic fertilizer and definitely try it out. As always guys, may your plants grow strong and healthy. I'll see you next time.